Hey everyone, can you imagine being alive for 10 millennia? Marching across world after world, attempting to bring compliance in the name of the Allfather? Well, today we'll be talking about one such warrior. The Space Wolf legend known as Bjorn the Fell-Handed is one of the oldest Astartes to have lived and campaigned alongside the Emperor in the Great Crusade. Let's find out a little bit more about this son of Rus. Bjorn's history spans back to the days of the founding. Bjorn ascends to an Astartes of the Space Wolf chapter. After completing the gene enhancement process, he is assigned to the Third Great Company, known amongst the warriors as the Valka Fenrika, or the Wolves of Fenris. The commander of this great company was Jarl Ogvai Helmskrot, who was respected as an incredible tactician and stern warrior, and saw incredible success within the many theatres of the Crusade. Most notable of these was the Battle of Prospero, in which he served as an unwilling guardian for the Remembrancer Caspar Horsa, in atonement for wrongly shooting down the manned shuttle out of orbit during Caspar's arrival on the Space Wolf homeworld of Fenris. It would be this battle that started his saga in earnest. Although the battle's details are lost to history and the sheer savagery of the battle, one surviving account states that Bjorn saved the Remembrancer's life as he was hunted by a horrid demon. In a savage close quarters engagement which saw Bjorn cleaving the demon's arm from its body as it strangled the life from Caspar Horsa. However, surviving several mortal blows, the demon manages to survive, and worse, manages to pull Bjorn's true names from Horsa's memory, allowing for foul sorceries to be cast upon the Space Wolf. Bjorn's saving grace was that Horsa had subconsciously always translated his name into Bear in High Gothic, meaning that his true name still remained hidden. Whilst this nullified some of the foul magics that assaulted his psyche, the battle remained closely fought. In a scramble that left Bjorn reaching for a weapon, he thrust forward the demon's severed arm, and with it an incredible burst of warp energy, but the cost of this was monumental. Bjorn's hand was a smouldering, decayed ruin of flesh, and the evidence of corruption carrying up his arm caused near debilitating pain. But still Bjorn struggled on. Luck would be on his side, with aid coming in the form of a rune priest, along with a squad of Sisters of Silence, 2 Space Wolf dreadnoughts, and according to some Imperial legends, even Constantin Valador. All sisters have the pariah gene, making them nulls which interrupt warp magics, before the foul beast was shredded by the 2 dreadnoughts' heavy bolters. Depending on who is telling the story, it is either Horsa or Valdor which saves Bjorn's life by hacking the polluted, ruined arm at the elbow, preventing the decay from spreading further. This event became famed within the Wolf companies, with Horsa especially vocal of the warrior's heroism in resistance and the defeat of such a heretical beast. As the heresy took its form, Bjorn's legend continued to grow. Under the careful coaxing of the chapter's skalds, he had survived the encounter with the strange demonic beast, and his fellow Space Wolves spoke of a deep, attached word to the warrior, and as such, Bjorn's pack would often be nominated to lead assaults into enemy strongpoints. Time and time again, the warrior and his pack would crack seemingly impossible positions, butchering those that stood in their path. That was until the volcanic world of Grith, with the Kornite demon king Arvax the Arch-Slaughterer butchering Bjorn's squad to the last, with Bjorn only surviving through exceptional martial prowess. The tide of the battle only turned with the arrival of the Primarch Leman Russ, which then saw them overcome the blood-frenzied war host, and alongside his lord, Bjorn would relentlessly assault the demon host's lord, leading to his eventual defeat. Although Arvax managed to escape the world and evade the Wolf Lord and his vengeful sons. Whilst the war was seen as a success, Bjorn struggled to come to terms with the loss of his packmates, that the Astartes now lived alone, and perhaps the worst of all, had been denied his warrior's death. In the hours that followed the victory, Bjorn became more and more melancholy, refusing to accept the praise of those that had witnessed his incredible struggle against the Demon King. As the last of his packmates' bodies caught fire atop the victory pyres, Bjorn sank to his knees in the light of these flames and let out a long mournful howl. An oath of vengeance was sworn that night against his kin's slayer. The Demon King would frustrate the Space Wolves for 5 torturous standard years. However, once the Khornite warhost was located, Russ immediately dispatched the Great Companies. And whilst the Primarch sought to avenge his fallen sons, he would be denied by one of these very sons. Bjorn was first to meet Arvax in battle, and it was noted that Russ watched with fierce pride as Bjorn deftly rolled an incoming axe swing before ascending the demon's massive frame, gouging the beast's throat with his wolf claw. The aftermath of the battle would see Russ come to Bjorn and inform him that he had fulfilled his oath of vengeance. Bjorn, in a tradition that still exists to this day, was promoted to the Wolf Guard, being named the Fell-Handed. It is unknown why the Wolf Lord Leman Russ ultimately left Bjorn behind before disappearing, and the Skalds of the chapter held that the loss and tragedy that the Fell-Hand had already endured swayed the Lord, but he also possessed the vision, strength and determination within the darkest of hours, and would understand the burden of command in the Wolf Lord's absence. Whilst few will know the true fate of Leman Russ, what is known is that he vanished within the 31st millennia, near 2 standard centuries before the Emperor's ascension to the Golden Throne, after the conclusion of the heresy. On that day, all of the Space Wolf warriors, lords and Russ himself gathered on Fenris for a great feast. This day became known as the Feast of the Emperor's Ascension, and as the halls quietened to listen to the great wolf's words, his eyes suddenly glazed, as if granted a vision, and suddenly fell to his knees. Russ called for all his wolf guard, bar the youngest amongst them, Bjorn, whilst giving them swift instructions before leaving only Bjorn behind. It is rumoured amongst the sons of Russ that he ventured into the Eye of Terror in search of the Tree of Life, which may bear the fruit to heal his father. It is now Bjorn that retells the tale of the Great Wolf's disappearance every 1,000 standard years. Bjorn is now the oldest dreadnought, not only in his own chapter, but within all chapters of Space Marines. It is clear that Russ chose Bjorn to lead the chapter in the wake of his departure for his tenacity in metal, which has proved time and time again. The warrior has dealt with the loss of his packmates and claimed their vengeance, becoming a strong warrior in mind, body and spirit. It was indeed a clear choice. Bjorn would fit well into the reforging of the Imperium under Robert Guilliman's stewardship. However, the embers of rejection would smoulder within the young warrior, and Bjorn would be unable to shake the sorrow of being unable to follow his gene-father one final time, and bitterness for leaving him alone with no explanation burned within the young wolf. Whilst this was possibly the highest honour that could have been granted for such an acclaimed warrior, this instead felt like a punishment for an unknown flaw that Bjorn had. Several years passed with the Wolf King's absence at the feasts, despite his plate and cup still being filled should he return. After the 7th year, the Wolf Lords assembled and named Bjorn their leader. And it was with great reluctance Bjorn assumed the burden his father had gave him, becoming the first Great Wolf. Bjorn's first act as Great Wolf was to call all the warriors of the Legion to the Great Hall within the Fang, and to announce the first of what is now known as the Great Hunts. The sons of Rus would seek to find their lord, even if it took them till the end of time. With the announcement, the 12 great companies would sail within their void ships in numbers unseen since the Great Crusade. Bjorn decreed that the companies should cover different parts of the Sea of Stars, in hopes of tracing their lord. Bjorn decreed that the companies should cover differing parts of the Sea of Stars, in the hope of finding a trace of their lord. As the Great Wolf, Bjorn was tireless, and proved to be incredibly worthy to bear the honour of the Great Wolf's title, and would act as the spiritual and moral compass for the entire chapter. Bjorn would appear resolute in every action he undertook. However, it was only the wolf priest Ulrich that perceived the real truth. Bjorn sought the benediction of his father, and that he could know no peace until he fought and died beside him. Bjorn's tale was very nearly cut tragically short on the world of Proxima, whilst assisting in the suppression of a rebellion towards the end of the 31st millennium. Bjorn led the charge into the horrific Dreadsun Fortress, a well-defended enemy strongpoint which harboured trapped battle brothers. The raid proved to be a success, with the wolves managing to extract their brothers. However, during the action, Bjorn would sustain grievous injuries that would kill the Space Wolf hero. His body was rushed back to the Space Wolf battle barge, and into the hands of the tech priests aboard, who interred Bjorn into his final resting place. He was to become Wrath Incarnate, a dreadnought. As Bjorn returned to consciousness and began to come to terms with his new existence, he was acutely aware of the burden of his title, and gravely concerned that he could no longer fulfill his duties as Great Wolf. As such, Bjorn became the first and only Great Wolf to abdicate his position. Confined within his adamantium shell, Bjorn's conviction to persecute the alien, heretic and demon burned within the next 500 years, being filled with battle and bloodshed. Bjorn could be seen slowly striding towards the enemy at the fore of every assault, leading the young pups by example and acting as a guiding hand for successor Great Wolves. But the toll that this took upon the warrior's already shattered form was monumental, and required Bjorn to spend longer and longer in periods of dormant stasis. Bjorn is now only awakened during times of crisis, or should a Great Wolf require guidance from this legendary hero. Examples of this would include the Space Wolves' clash against the Demon Prince Magnus the Red, or during the Months of Shame, which saw the wolves at odds with factions within the Imperial Inquisition, and it was actually Bjorn that managed to negotiate peace with the awe-filled Inquisitors. The Inquisitor asks, You walked in the age of the Emperor? Bjorn made the gear-grinding chuckle again. Walked, pissed, ran and killed. I did it all. I met the Allfather, you know. Fought at his side more than once. I do believe he liked me. The Inquisitor slowly went to his knees. Bjorn finally says, Ofa, not you as well. Bjorn is awakened at the dawn of each standard millennium to hold court at the Great Feast, commemorating the disappearance of their Lord Leman Russ. At some point during the feast, a delegation of Iron Priests will stride into the hall, escorting a massively imposing figure. The Great Hall of the Fang will fall silent as the Great Wolf will rise and make way to allow the new arrival to rightfully take his place. As Bjorn speaks during the feast, the brothers will listen with respectful silence, as entire generations of wolves will be born, fight and die without ever witnessing Bjorn's incredible presence. Whilst the tales may seem tall to the young Bloodclaws, Bjorn's memory remains clear, and he speaks with such a certainty that can only come from one that has witnessed such amazing feats of the Great Crusade, their Gene Father Russ, and of that of the Allfather. The oldest amongst the wolves know that there is one tale that causes Bjorn's strong voice to falter, as he begins to regale the tale of Russ's decision to leave for the Eye of Terror and the appointment of the first Great Wolf. There are painful undertones within his voice. The warrior still dwells on his failure to join his father. Bjorn represents the chapter's greatest link to their past and their gene father, a legendary figure with words that are akin to law. He is the only warrior that can view decisions with the perception of their Primarch standards, and as such, even the most stubborn of great wolves such as Logan Grimnar, the current bearer of the mantle, will defer to Bjorn when he speaks against him. On the occasion that Bjorn is required to now take the field, it is said to be a truly frightening sight to behold. The Space Wolves will fight with a tenacity and ruthlessness that is remarkable even for their kind. Should any enemy be unfortunate enough to score even a glancing blow on Bjorn's sacred carapace, they are whipped into a vengeful frenzy, charging with a rage that's rarely seen. Bjorn seems to be the final link to the glory days of the Imperium, before it slowly declined into a state of stale decay, although he may not have even noticed it himself. Personally, I find Bjorn's tale a rather sad one, and all built on one misunderstanding that easily could have been resolved by communication. A typical 40k relationship though. Bjorn feels hurt and doesn't realise that actually he's the most trusted warrior Russ had access to, but Russ couldn't be bothered to take 5 minutes to actually tell him as much. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like, a comment, and maybe even subscribe.